This is James Arnold Taylor, voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Welcome to a more civilized podcast. This is the podcast you're looking for. You may not go about your business. Stay here, listen, and then move along.
Hey there, I'm Kyler.
You said that wrong. It was supposed to be, hello there.
Hello there.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Ross. Kyler, who are we talking to?
To our listeners, of course.
The AMCP listeners?
AMCP listeners, Star Wars fans.
Yeah,
I'm trying to mix it up, you know?
Well, I feel like we've kind of forgotten our own intro, because last episode I felt really bad because we just started talking.
Yeah.
When I was
it was
editing
awesome.
When I was editing it, I mean, I did the James Arnold Taylor intro, then it's just Chris going. Chris talking about the panel, I think, is what we started with. We totally forgot the intro last time, so sorry.
Well, we apologize if you were offended.
We're merely adequate.
Yep, we're only adequate.
And
our listeners probably didn't notice. They're pretty adequate too.
Yeah. I thought about doing one on my own just during the edit, but I was like,
that would have been
lazy.
freaking hilarious. Hey everybody, I'm Ross.
I'm Ross.
And I'm Ross. And I'm Ross.
It would have gotten something more along the lines of, we now join this podcast already in progress. Please forgive us for forgetting to do the intro.
Continued from last
adequate.
time.
Oh, man. Well, there we go.
Previously on a more civilized podcast. That would have been. We should really. Next time we do a two-parter.
Yeah, no kidding. That's such a great idea.
We should do that and then have like Avatar: The Last Airbender music on it. Was previously on.
Oh, I love that.
Except that's probably
idea.
Copyrighted.
Yep, definitely is. For sure. Okay, well, as usual, we've got some news now that we're into regular episodes again and not Star Wars Celebration episodes.
Guys, it's been a busy week. I haven't even opened up this episode set list. I don't even know what's in the news.
Yeah, so we've
I'm
got Ryan Johnson reaction to episode 9 trailer. He's excited for it.
Yeah.
Who cares?
That's right.
That's about all there is important to say about that.
Yeah, it was just I put that in there just to kind of stick it to
me.
Yeah, basically.
We both our listeners and I know exactly why that's in there, Ross.
Yep.
This next one though is kind of important.
I can't even find my stupid sheet.
Bob Iger stepping down as president of Disney, not next year, but the year after, 2021.
That's really interesting. Yeah, it's
So,
been a while since they've had a change of leadership there.
Yeah.
Well, and I also put those news things in our repository. The article I was reading said that his contract actually came due several years ago, and that he extended it.
Yeah.
In preparation for the Fox deal. So I guess it was kind of his baby. And now that's kind of done.
Finally pulled it off and was like, all right, I'm going to go out on top.
Basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he's got a couple years to just sort of oversee the transition because it just barely went through.
Yeah.
As of this recording. I mean, it's only a few weeks old at this point. So yeah, he's got 2 years where he'll just sort of continue to make sure the transition is as smooth as possible, and then
he's gone.
And he's out.
Because
to presumably go live the rest of his life in a big Scrooge McDuck pile of money.
Yeah. Wasn't the president of Disney before him, didn't he kind of retire in disgrace? Wasn't there some scandal?
There was a lot of, if I remember right, there was a lot of bad blood between him and a lot of the people. I'm trying to remember his name. My mind's going blank, but
yeah, I don't remember either.
Yeah, I remember hearing something about that. It was pretty heated. Before Bob Iger was Michael Eisner, and so now that I think about it, it hasn't really been that long since they've had a change of CEO. But
but we didn't pay attention because they didn't own Star Wars back then.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I played quite a bit of attention because I believe
Bob Iger was still around for the Star Wars purchase, wasn't he? So I mean, he's been around for
he's
5
been around
years
for a bit.
already.
But Eisner, let me see, Michael Eisner,
I believe was ousted before that was ever even a thought.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
he was
Bob
head
Iger's
of.
been around since like at least 2014.
He was CEO until 2005, and that's when.
Okay.
So
so that's been quite a long ways.
14 years. That's not bad.
Dang.
Well, I mean, for comparison, Eisner was CEO for 21 years. So. But I believe at least part of why he left, or maybe probably not why he left, but part of why he left in like less than glowing terms, was because there was a big kerfuffle over Pixar. Because Disney's contract with Pixar was due to expire because Disney had distribution. Pixar made the movies, Disney distributed everything, and it was a contract that overwhelmingly favored Disney.
Right.
Because when it started, why wouldn't it?
Right.
And then, but by that point, in the early 2000s, Pixar was a big force for quality movie making, still is. But the problem was that Disney and Pixar did not have a great relationship. And so Pixar's contract was going to run up, and then they could start distributing their own stuff or more likely go to someone else, and everybody would be jumping at the chance to be distributing for Pixar. And so Disney was just all over like, okay, we got to have some great negotiations here. But the problem was that, according to what I heard, was that Eisner and what was head of Pixar at the time, John Lasseter, thank you. Eisner and Lasseter did not get along, like at all.
Well, yeah, going through the animation program at UVU at that time, I mean, you talk about this every so often. Pixar and Disney have never really had a good relationship.
No, they really haven't.
Well, I guess actually probably more recently I think they're fine.
With some good reason. Like Disney kind of really shafted Pixar in a lot of ways over the years.
And from what I understand, especially in the beginning, Pixar generally, because of that deal, would barely make enough money to make the next movie. Yeah. Like Toy Story 2 almost didn't happen because one day one of their servers, one of their big backups was it wasn't supposed to be cleaned up, but it started getting wiped, and so like animators were animating, and all of a sudden like Woody's hat would disappear, and then a minute later his boot would disappear, and all of a sudden like one of the leads finally figured it out and called down to the server room or whoever was doing
and said, "Stop pushing buttons, dang it!"
Yeah, halt the presses is basically what it was, and
it was a huge. And they did lose quite a bit off of that.
Yeah, well, and it almost didn't happen. It almost killed Pixar because someone scheduled something to be deleted.
Boy, somebody got fired so fast.
But then Eisner and Lasseter just could not get along, and so it basically negotiations came to a standstill, and Pixar was like, all right, let's shop around to everyone else, and then Disney went, wait. We are stupid rich. Let's just buy them. They're a publicly traded company. We're just going to buy them out. And so they did that, and which is why so many of the executives from Pixar are now in offices of importance at Disney, is because in order to keep them all from jumping ship to DreamWorks or wherever, Disney had to like, okay, wait, we're going to put you in charge of not only Pixar, but Disney Animation too, okay? It'll be fine, please stay. And so they did get most of them to stay.
A few years later, Disney finally started catching up in the 3D space.
Yep, right. Yeah, that's Disney. That was that not coincidentally coincided with Disney's animation picking back up and doing well again. But yeah, that was, at least, I don't know if that actually had anything to do with it, but it's a fun story about all of that. Very interesting. And I like that story in particular as it ties into us talking about Star Wars, because I feel like that is the moment where Disney went, wait, this is a nice practice. What other studios can we just straight up buy and then just have keep churning out good work for us while we roll in the dough? Hey guys, look at this Marvel thing over here. Marvel made their own studios, but they don't really know what they're doing when it comes to movie distribution and everything, but they're still doing really well. Let's just buy them. So they did that, and then someone was like, this is great. Guys, Star Wars. Star Wars, guys. And so, hey, that is my fan fiction about how the Star Wars merger came to be.
Yeah, that's
Star Wars purchase. It's probably, I like to think that there was just one dude with like gold fingers on all his rings and sunglasses that he wore to every meeting.
gold fingers on all his rings?
Yeah, gold rings on all his fingers, thank you. Gold fingers on all his rings. It was really ostentatious and kind of creepy. He's got all these fingers on. Yeah, no. But yeah, that's I like to think that there's this dude that like wears a Hawaiian shirt that's unbuttoned down, showing all this tons of chest hair, all these gold rings on his fingers, sunglasses at every meeting, super balding head that he's got like a comb over on or something, and him just sitting there at all these meetings going like, guys, wait, we buy Star Wars.
Now, Chris, I don't know if you realize how close you're hitting the mark, but have you ever seen a picture of John Lasseter?
I have seen a picture of John Lasseter, and that's a fair point.
Because you're kind of pushing the image there.
That is a fair point. I like John Lasseter, but way more skeezy is what I'm picturing.
Anyway. And finally on our list of news, now that I've finally caught up and know what the crap I'm talking about, a little bit of
it's always funny to see you more adequate than usual.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I'm almost competent.
That was the real purpose of all that story. I wasn't on a huge tangent just eating up time. I was stalling for Ross, and you'll never prove otherwise.
Sure, Chris, sure. Anyway, so, episode 9 speculation. Does Chuck Wendig know something we don't?
I hope not.
Chuck Wendig is the writer of the Aftermath series
that start out in all seriousness and not in the joking way we use it, that start out adequate and go downhill from there.
Yeah, I had a hard time getting into them, but
I haven't even tried.
Don't waste your time.
I believe it was right after the Star Wars trailer released, Chuck started tweeting. And
Yeah,
in
this
one
tweet is
particular
all the way
tweet-
back from April 12th.
Yeah,
Right
which
in the
was
middle
day.
of Star Wars Celebration. Yep.
In fact, it would have been right after, probably at 11:38 a.m.
Yeah.
It would have been shortly after the trailer.
Yeah,
Anyway,
11:30 is when the panel ended. So
Right.
yeah, that's right. Right after.
and so his tweet says, "I'm just saying, now's probably a good time to at least read or reread Empire's End because, you know." And then he has a gif of the Emperor saying "Do it" from episode 3. So
Do it.
um,
And I'm saying, don't bother, because it's.
did you
they're
read
not-
Empire's End?
Yeah, I've read all of them.
Okay.
And they're, like I said, they start at barely adequate with the first one, and they go downhill at a fairly quick pace from there.
Yeah. Apparently, there are some plot points that people think are likely to be.
Yeah, I mean, there's Admiral Sloane going off into the unknown regions where an entire Imperial fleet is waiting, including 1 or 2 Super Star Destroyers. And so it'd be awful, but
And here's the thing for me.
Empire comes back or something. It's just
As I've discussed this on other episodes, where it's just like, look, introducing something, a plot point in a book that 99% of your fan base isn't going to read, like the amount of Star Wars fans, people who consider themselves fans and will go to the movies, it is in the 100 millions easily. That's a huge chunk of the population. But the number of people reading the books, watching the TV series, all of that is minuscule by comparison. Profitable enough for, like, you know, the publishing industry, profitable enough for the TV, especially cartoon industry, but by no means the juggernaut that the entire Star Wars fan base is.
Yeah.
And so introducing plot points in obscure books and then porting them wholesale to the movies is possible. It's absolutely possible, but you have to reintroduce them in the movies. You can't just rely on them unless, of course, you're Solo. So, which is why I say this with a caveat there, because until Solo did it, it was something that I was like, no one would ever do that because that's just dumb. Like that makes no sense at all. And then they did it in Solo, and it was dumb, but they did it anyway. So I'm like, okay, well, apparently we're not necessarily abiding by that. So maybe.
Yeah. From the article that I read about this, it wasn't so much they're going to be directly lifting plot points out of the book, but more of just like themes and ideas that were introduced in the book would pertain to episode 9. I mean, Disney's...
None of the themes introduced in those books are themes that I care to see on screen.
But I mean, with Disney's now had practice watching Marvel do multimedia connecting to itself sort of thing. So it wouldn't surprise me to see them trying to do this, but I feel more like this is Chuck Wendig going, "Hey, buy my book."
Yeah,
nudge, nudge.
I would wager that that's a good chunk of what he's doing.
And if that's what it is, great, because that means I don't have to give him any more of my money. But seriously, listeners, don't bother with those books. Go to Wikipedia, read the plot synopsis, and save yourself hours and hours of torture. Those books are not well written. The characters are stupidly written. There are a handful of interesting characters, like Admiral Sloane, who are genuinely intelligent, thinking people who then, to serve the plot, are forced to make the dumbest choices ever when clearly, by their own character, they should be making other choices.
Going to refrain from making any Rogue One jokes here and move on.
Yeah, but Rogue One looked really cool.
That it did. I will grant you that.
And
So-
Aftermath did not.
Yeah, there we go. It's kind of surprising too because I remember everyone being really excited when Aftermath started publishing.
Oh, I
'cause we
was
were getting Star
excited
Wars
too
books
because the
again,
idea of,
but-
okay, let's bridge 6 and 7, and then he bridges like a couple of years, and then now we're going to fast forward and just jump us right to the Battle of Jakku, and here you go. And by the way, nobody's making choices that they should be making
Right.
by the end of the trilogy. Like, nobody is making choices.
I would
they should
wager that Wendig's just trying to
Yeah.
push the sales, and but I mean, maybe there might be some minor things that actually factor into the movie.
If
but
any
I
of
would
you
wager
actually
if they
like
did.
the Aftermath books, let me know, because I would be deeply interested in hearing what makes you
You're
think
actually
they're
making
good.
me very curious to just like I wonder how I'd react to them now. Cause
Yeah.
Between
I
Rogue One
kinda
and Last
do.
Jedi, I am
I
curious.
kind of do
like-
want you to read them. I want to hear what you think, Chris, of Gallius Rax, because that character
Okay.
makes no sense
We'll
at
see.
all.
We've got him at the library. I might pick him up
Especially
after
as
I'm
the
finished
main
with,
protagonist.
Well,
He's
see,
just
after I
stupid.
finished up a few of the
Or
like
antagonist,
16 books I'm in the middle of right now.
Carrie and I only got 30 minutes into it, listening to it read on an audiobook.
Oh yeah, I don't do that.
And because we'd stop there and have no desire to go back just because of the third person, at least for me, the third person omniscient, I think is
Oh
what
yeah,
it was.
Omniscient's hard to write.
But it was just like, I don't know, I just couldn't get into it because I couldn't frame it well in my head.
Intrigue. I am full of intrigue. Yeah, give me a couple months, because, like I said, I'm in the middle of like 16 books right now.
Yep.
And I really need to finish off a few of those before I move on.
Yeah, I hear you. I just got a recent shipment of new Star Wars books that finally were low enough on Amazon that I was like, okay, I can get these now. So now I've got a pile of.
Oh, hey,
next
by
to
the
my
way,
desk.
I'm getting the entire Clone Wars series, so that'd be fun.
Hey,
Yeah.
nice.
Where apparently they don't check out at the library enough, so they're getting rid of all of them. So I was just like,
Oh, so you're just
I'll take
taking them.
those. Well, I have to
Well,
buy
buying them,
yeah.
yeah,
But
still,
I,
that's gonna be
because
way
I'm
cheap.
taking the whole thing, I get them for half off, which means I am getting all 5 seasons of Clone Wars for like $10.
Dang, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
It's nice. I was pleased.
Do they have the secret missions? The fake 6 season?
I don't think they do.
Okay.
Pretty sure
Okay.
from what I saw, but yeah, I was pleased. I was just like, oh hey, just after we got rid of our Netflix subscription, I get all those anyway, so I
Yeah,
can keep
nice. Well done.
going. Yeah.
Okay. Is that it for news?
That is, yep,
then?
that's the end of the news.
Okay. So, this episode, as you might have guessed by the title, Star Wars and Superheroes here, we're going to
No
be
way to lock
talking...
us in on a title, man.
I know, right?
Yeah, man.
It was good, all right?
It is a good one.
It is
I
good.
agree.
I thought, well, and it's been up there for weeks.
I wrote it, so I'm fine with it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So stop your stupid complaining. Totally derailed my train of thought. So we're talking about, and part of the reason why we're doing this episode this week, it was originally a little bit more down the road, and then we pulled it up to do it here because Avengers Endgame has just come out.
In case you missed that, by the way, that
Yeah.
came out last week.
And maybe Ross will throw in a totally unrelated to Star Wars Nerf nugget as Chris and Ross discuss their feelings on Endgame.
Nah, it's all too spoilery. I'm not putting that up anyway.
Maybe later. Who knows? Anyway, yeah, they were talking for like an hour before we recorded, but it was recording.
It was only 45 minutes because we ate nachos before that.
That's true. Oh yeah, my nacho debt has been paid. So
Yes.
I did bring Ross my super nachos, and he generously shared them with Chris and I.
He did.
So my debt has been paid.
Yes.
So
Yes, I was very proud.
yep, a Kyler always pays his debts.
Yes.
So yeah, we're
Which makes if you're a Lannister, then what does that make Ross? Like,
oh no, Ross is definitely a Stark for sure.
well,
He's
but that's
all
the
full
thing,
of
though.
honor. and-
Lannisters don't repay their debts to Starks that way.
and neither did I. In about 12 hours, we'll all be dead. No, I'm just kidding.
Excellent.
No, so there's been a lot of talk and comparison between the Marvel universe and Star Wars, specifically in terms of sheer numbers and an amount of stuff to view, right? There's been talk for years already of maybe, superhero burnout, that people are just tired of Marvel movies. Like there are multiple Marvel movies, 2 or 3 released every year for the past couple years.
Yep.
This year, I think there's going to be 4 or 5 superhero movies, not just Marvel, but all superhero movies together. There's like 4 or 5 getting released this year.
Yeah,
There's-
well,
I
I mean,
think
there's 3 Marvel. We've
and then
already had
there's
1
Shazam.
DC. Yeah.
Yeah,
and
so like there's
we're getting
there's a
another
bunch.
DC later.
Yeah. And so people have been like, oh, we're getting kind of burned out on this. Like, we've had our fill of superhero movies. It's been a really fun decade.
These things always go in waves. And,
Yeah, and people are going, okay, well, now with Star Wars, like, we were all really excited for Episode 7, but then we had Rogue One, then we had 8, then we had Solo, we're having 9, now we're getting Mandalorian, we had Rebels, it's just kind of like, ooh, is Star Wars already down that same path of getting fatigue? And so we were like, that would be an interesting comparison to say, okay, let's talk about these 2 massive geek ideologies that are out there, or franchises, or universes, whatever you want to call it, and just kind of see where the discussion takes us.
Well, and part of what I wanted to discuss with this, what originally gave me the idea was, I've referenced it once or twice on here. There's a video I shared in the Facebook group a while back. It was Bob Chipman discussing the Star Wars, the cartoon clips that they've been putting on YouTube. I forget what they're called.
Oh yeah. The it's not Adventures, is it?
Yeah,
Or-
Galaxy of Heroes, I think. or
Oh
something
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
No, well, that's the game.
Oh, okay,
It's a
something else.
mobile
Anyway,
game.
Disney has been releasing animated Star Wars clips on YouTube that basically sum up certain characters or certain events in the original trilogy. But they're all animated, but using audio from the original movies, and it's basically a way of acknowledging that a huge chunk of the younger generation is not watching those. We've got a friend that works as an art teacher, and he's mentioned a couple times to me at least how he was discussing the original Star Wars movie in his class of 14-year-olds and just got all these blank looks of people
he'd
who had no idea
mention
what
something.
talking
He'd be
about.
like, "Oh, well, when Luke and Leia they're in the Death Star and they do this," and his class would just like blink, blink,
And I have had that
no
with
idea.
dealing with teenagers before, where I'm talking about narrative and everything, and I reference Star Wars: A New Hope because it's
iconic and
it is
useful
and it is one of the pinnacles of like, here is a clean expression of this particular narrative of the hero's journey and everything. So it's a really handy example, also because everybody knows it, except that generation, it's hit or miss. And so it kind of, Disney's making these videos as a method of giving younger audience something that they're more fast paced, more action paced, that they're a little more in the style of the present day and designed to appeal to younger viewers, and so that they can like kind of get caught up on who's Luke, who's Leia, who's Han, and who are Han and Chewie, what's the Millennium Falcon, what happened between Luke and Vader on Cloud City, etc., 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 and basically introducing them and saying, here, you don't actually have to go back and watch the original trilogy.
Here's
can
the
just
clip notes.
Here's YouTube videos, which are the media media center of your generation, that you can watch and get caught up instead. But then Movie Bob also pointed out that in a lot of ways this could be construed as an effort to distance the original characters from the actors who've played them. Like even in comics and every sort of media that they've diversified into over the years, you look at the book covers, you look at the comics and everything, they have worked very hard to try and be faithful to Mark Hamill's features and Harrison Ford's and Carrie Fisher's, often to the detriment of the art. Like a lot of it is really like Uncanny Valley level stuff.
I was going to actually say, like, they, for the most part, they do a really good job, and I enjoy the faithfulness to the original people, but there have been a couple panels in a few issues where I'm kind of like, it looks like you slapped like a comic book filter over a photograph of Mark Hamill or of Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford,
it looks
especially.
like you've traced it, or
it looks a little silly.
Yeah, or you're trying so hard to be faithful that it hits this Uncanny Valley,
and
where it's like, that's not Mark Hamill. I know that's not. It's just kind of creepy how much it does look like him.
Especially in comics, I would prefer a slightly more stylized approach, because it's like, I'm gonna know that that's Mark Hamill portraying Luke Skywalker on your page.
Yeah.
But it's okay, like, to stylize it just a little bit, make it a little bit comic booky, so that you don't get weirded out by it. Because there have been probably half a dozen instances over, and those are just ones I can think of off the top of my head, especially in the main Star Wars line of comics. Mm-hmm. There have been a handful of instances where I'm just kind of like, I flip the page and it's kind of like, okay, let me read the page, and I'll just kind of ignore that one panel because it's Han's looking at me weird, or whatever, And I've noticed it's usually with Han that I get really jarred by it. It's very weird.
Yep. So there's been a significant effort to try and just very faithfully reproduce the original actors in everything they do. And so Movie Bob pointed out that this is kind of Disney taking a step away from that and perhaps trying to disassociate these characters from the original actors, especially because the original actors are older and older and increasingly unavailable. One at a time. And
sad day.
Yes.
Off to the great casting call in the sky.
Yes. so that they can free themselves up to just kind of reproduce these characters in whatever format they want and do whatever they want with them over the years.
Well, and that's been one thing that I've noticed. So I subscribe to and purchase all of the canon comics that come out. With the exception of novels or movies that get a comic book adaptation, because then I'm like, I either have the book or I have the movie, so I'm not going to get the comic.
Yep.
But all the rest of them I get, and they have, all but like 2 of the comic series are geared towards your adult fans who have money to be spending on comic books. But there's one of the ones for kids. There's one of them that I don't subscribe to at all, even though it's canon, but I'm just like, it's too kiddish even for me. But there's another one that's sort of in between. It's called Star Wars Adventures.
Yeah, I've seen this.
And that one is geared more towards like your upper elementary / middle school age kind of kids, you know. And so I get those ones anyway, just so that I'm aware of the stories that are going on, even though the dialogue in the stories are a lot more toned down and simple and whatever. But in those ones, the artwork is a lot more stylized. And it's been interesting because they've been doing a mix of both old and new. So you'll have Harrison Ford, but you'll also have Alden Ehrenreich, Han Solo, show up, depending on kind of when they're doing it. But they're using and I thought that was interesting since you bring that up, that they are saying, okay, since we're targeting this new generation who doesn't necessarily know Han Solo, we're going to start stylizing heavily both old and new to sort of blend them together, so that as you grow up, you're okay with accepting the old since you've grown up with the new, and you know, since we're blurring those lines, we can then maybe pull people elsewhere for later stories and movies now that you've grown accustomed to sort of a blurry version of what Padme looks like or whatever.
Well, and it frees us up to do more variety, to do more things with these characters. And as I got thinking about it, the best example I could think of what it seemed like they were maybe trying to do was the superhero franchises, where it's like Batman has been illustrated by a billion different people at this point, or costume designers or actors and so on and so forth.
And he looks awesome in all but one version.
Most versions, many versions.
The Batman and Robin nipple suit.
He was thinking of,
well, I was even also thinking actually season 4 of the 90s cartoon.
Don't you dare.
For seasons 1 through 3 are great.
Don't you dare take Batman the Animated Series name in vain.
They changed the art style for the 4th season, and it was not the same.
I love that show.
When you talk about the 90s Batman series, you're talking about seasons 1 through 3.
Yeah.
4 doesn't exist.
I hear you there. I don't know. I honestly didn't follow that animated series well
missed
enough.
out,
Like
Chris.
I've seen plenty of it, you know, but
Did
I
you
wasn't
watch
like
Gargoyles?
actively following it. I never did watch Gargoyles.
Gargoyles was awesome.
I've heard that from so many
Dang,
people. Never
watched a
watched
little
it.
and remember
well,
liking it,
okay,
but
except for
whatever.
like the last season of Gargoyles, it got weird, but
That
that's
happens
usually
with
the
last
case.
season
Yeah,
so
Funny how that goes, yeah.
but the first few seasons, Chris, we'll have a Gargoyle watching party.
We'll see. I've
It's
tried.
pretty
It
good.
might be beyond the age where I can do that. We'll see. But,
See, and I wonder if I'm immune to that because I watched it as a kid, so
well,
I got
yeah,
the
that's what
nostalgia
happens.
going for
Exactly.
me.
That's the first time I made my wife watch The Goonies. She was just like, what is this? This is horrible.
See,
and
that-
so I actually sat back and watched it with a more objective eye, and I was like, okay, you're not wrong. This is kind of
See,
horrible.
my wife, same thing. She loves the Goonies because she watched
Carrie,
it as a kid.
Listen to that again.
And my wife loves Goonies. She watched it as a kid. And when I was a teenager in high school, my aunt got married. My mom's little sister got married to a guy who watched Goonies as a kid. And my mom never watched it as a kid. We had no idea what this movie even was. So I ended up watching it when I was like 14 or 15, something like that. And I was like, this is the dumbest crap I've ever seen. I didn't even finish the movie. Then when I got married and Christina was like, hey, let's watch this show. And I'm like, I watched it once, didn't really like it, but you're hot, you're my wife. Okay, I'll do it because you asked. I love you, sure. I watched it.
I love
and
that
I'm
you
like,
started with "You're hot." I'll do this.
yeah, well, you know, can't resist a pretty face. And so I was like, after that time, I'm like, never again. This is so stupid.
I've seen the first 15 minutes and the last like 30 because
my
they've been on
God.
TV as I've been around. But
Saying it's a similar sort of thing with like you've got stuff like Super 8 and Stranger Things that are all very, very heavily trying to ape not ape, but homage the Steven Spielberg classic 80s, kid-centered movies, and doing it very well in both of those cases. But a large part of what drives these newer productions is that heavy nostalgia factor for people who remember watching these kind of movies like The Goonies and like E.T. and all these others. And which is why my wife doesn't see a lot of the appeal. Like, she watched some of Stranger Things and was just like, I guess Super 8 was the same thing. Because she never really, A, she's kind of young, and B, she never really watched those movies anyway. Yeah. Whereas my sister, who's even younger, but did watch all those movies, just eats it up. She loves Super 8 and Stranger Things. And so
I couldn't get into Stranger Things, but my wife also loves it. Again,
I love it. It's
a
really
lot
well made.
for the
Yeah.
for the nostalgia factor. Though
Yeah.
she's like, I remember, having a Walkman or whatever, all those kind
And
of
see,
things.
I like it for the D&D factor, actually.
Oh, yeah, the D&D.
That's why my wife started watching it.
Yeah.
Was because she heard there were like lots of D&D references, and so she's like, I'm gonna watch this show, and then she got hooked.
Yeah, every episode. I mean,
Anyway,
it's- yeah.
so jumping back to Batman.
Back to Star
We're not even going back to Star Wars yet. But yeah,
We went down one Inception level. We got to return to the previous level first, and then we
can't
go
just
up.
ride
Yeah.
the cake all the way up. But you there's a lot of versions of Batman out there, right? And it doesn't matter who is drawing or animating or voicing Batman. We all recognize Batman when we see him.
Right.
And likewise, in the future, I think we'll be more likely to recognize young Luke Skywalker for his feathery hair and white outfit,
Right.
than we will for his.
Yeah, just like if
for
you go
being
to a
Mark
convention,
Hamill.
you know a Han Solo when you see one.
Yeah.
They've got brown hair, they've got a jacket, they've got pants probably with a stripe.
Yeah,
That's a Han Solo.
yeah, and a blaster.
Usually a
Yeah.
very particular blaster.
Well, and-
maybe a
ooh.
very large furry person following. him.
Yeah. Well, funny story though, because my twins have a Han Solo outfit that they had a white shirt and one of them put on like a blue like denim vest or whatever, and they're like, oh, "It's Han Solo." Okay, I'm Han Solo, and like
Yeah.
that, like it's that iconic. You have these certain image tropes. Could you say that? Is that
Yeah.
clearly
Yeah.
expressed? I don't know.
Well, the character design of the original Star Wars characters is really strongly done. Like, it's really well done. Which is why we can recognize Luke based on his feathery hair and white outfit, or his black outfit and, bowl cut. Not a bowl cut, but...
Or a different person with black outfit and feathery hair.
Exactly, and his
Swallow.
single Michael Jackson glove.
Yep.
And you can see, we recognize that all. So it has the really strong character design that'll allow Disney to migrate that, I think, without too much trouble. But it is also, it harkens back to what I said was it the 4th episode or something, whereas like I feel like part of the future of Star Wars that we all need to just come to grips with is Star Wars will be many different things for many different people. The part of why superheroes are so enduringly popular is because they can morph and change to fit different groups, kind of like old myths could when you had different people storytelling it. They could change it to what they want. And these days there are so many different, like, again, back to Batman. You ask someone, do you like Batman? Guys, do you like Batman? Yeah, everybody likes Batman. You don't like all Batmans.
That is fair.
Not by
That is
any
fair.
shape or means. Like I can, and same thing, Joker. Do you like the Joker? I love the Joker. He's one of my favorite villains. Do I like every incarnation of the Joker? Oh, no. Oh, my word. There are some really bad Joker stories out there.
Let me guess, your favorite is the 60s
Caesar Romero.
Joker.
As much as I love Cesar Romero and his refusal to shave that mustache underneath his grease paint.
Well, and I was going to bring up the 60s because I think in addition to, or maybe instead of not liking every version of Batman, is to say, well, they do offer different things and scratch different itches, because the Adam West 60s Batman, there's a certain charm in that Batman that
Those
is
are
not
all
anywhere
really well
else,
done.
And it's like the stories are kind of cheesy, but that's what they were going for. They were like, this is a comic book that we are going to film, so let's punch it up, let's cheese it up.
And two, it's like they knew at the time something that we've kind of forgotten over the years, and not necessarily bad, but just these were originally made for kids. Like, Superman, Batman, all of these were very much made for,
which is why it's all
young people.
Over the top, and everybody's chewing the scenery and just, hamming it up to high
And
heaven.
eventually people started going, wait, our audience is all growing up. Why can't we make more adult versions of this for them? And that is fine. But it's also important for a lot of people to not forget that these things are inherently silly because they were made for children, and they will always be somewhat inherently silly. And there's nothing wrong with that either. You get a lot of people that are just like, you have to take Batman seriously. And it's like, nobody has to take Batman seriously. I'm sorry. But yeah, so you've got all these different versions, and you really get out there. I mean, just Batman alone. I've probably read, with actual comics, I have probably read more Batman stuff than any other superhero.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
That's a lot of Batman.
it's a decent amount. Like that's more a statement on how little I've read of everything else.
Care to guess what comics I've read the most of?
I'm gonna go with My Little Pony.
Yep. No, just kidding. Although I have read a couple My Little Pony comics because my girls, when we moved to Michigan, there was a comic book store down the street, and Didn't have any of you around, so I was like, how am I going to spend my nerd energy? Ha!
My Little
Comic
Pony.
book store. And so then the girls, they were like, well, we want comics too. You know, we see you getting comics, Dad. And I'm like, well, they have My Little Pony right over there. And they were all excited, so they got a couple. And so,
Yep.
you know, and then they were
Good
reading
stuff.
them and getting excited. Oh, look at this, Daddy. Oh, yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's not as clever as the TV show, but still pretty
No,
good.
but it's not bad, yeah.
Yeah.
It's standard, you know,
Yep.
let's see how much more money we can make off of this
Yep.
fair. But yeah, so I've read a lot of Batman comics.
Is that getting into the episode?
Maybe.
The random screaming in the background.
Yeah, there, you might hear some squealing, listener. I have a niece and nephew.
We
that are
have a
upstairs.
torture chamber in the back of the...
But so, you know, with comics, it's like, okay, you've got, right now they've got the Batman series going on. They've got Batman Detective Comics version. I think they've got one other Batman series. I'm just going through, historically, they've got a ton of standalone stuff. They've got old canon that is no longer canon. And then they've got all these different side things that they've got comics based on Batman, the Arkham Asylum video games.
Yeah.
They've got the...
Where Batman is shaped like unto the Rock.
Yes. They've got the Metal series, where it's just this weird, like, fantasy hybrid stuff from another dimension coming in. It's weird stuff.
That was actually... Boy, this episode should just be retitled Tangents. But the Into the Spider-Verse, the noir Spider-Man...
yeah.
Coolest Spider-Man ever. I'm like,
Spider,
I
yeah.
want to go live in that Spider-Man world. Like, that's so cool. Or to see, like, even better, like a Batman that is like a noir 1930s Batman.
He's out there.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's out
Dang.
there.
Okay,
I've
I gotta
seen
go
that.
get some comics.
But yeah, there's a whole bunch of it. I just read one the other day that was interesting. It was well done, but it was weird. It was called Batman White Knight. And it was a kind of what-if style story where the Joker goes straight, where the Joker gets medicated and becomes sane, and ends up like running for city council or something like that, becoming a politician in Gotham City and still trying to take down Batman because he's going through all the socioeconomic stuff that's more realistically done, and showing how Batman is actually really bad for Gotham. And it was... like, again, it was a well-done thing if you just kind of ignore the fact that this is less a what-if story about what if the Joker became this, and it's more of a what if we had a character who was very similar to the Joker, but not at all the Joker we've all seen in the comics, or the movies, or anything else, and a character that's very similar to Batman, but more pushed towards edginess so that he can conceivably be more of a bad guy. It was a little frustrating for me because I was like, okay, you build this as a what if the Joker went straight, except that this is not the Joker. This is a version of the Joker. This is not Harley Quinn. This is not Batman. Batman was the closest of all of them, but even then it was like, this is a version of Batman that's a little more over the edge. But it was still interesting, you know? So it was like one of those, if I could let go of the fact that this is not really Batman and the Joker and everything, it's a version of them, okay, you know, I had an okay time with that. But then in addition to those, you've got the Batman Superman comics, you've got the Batman /Ninja Turtle comic that came out a while back.
What?
Yeah, they've got one of those. You've got the Trinity comics where you've got Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman all together. Like, there's so many different things, and these are not all the same continuity. It's just a huge mess like superhero comics tend to be. You know, and then you get to like something like Spider-Man, where it's like, yeah, we've Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It's like, these are all actually lifted from various versions of Spider-Man or Spider-Woman, etc. over the years. If you get the actual Into the Spider-Verse comic events and everything, they were calling in so many more than they even referenced in that movie. A lot of them are just really not worth bringing into that movie, which is why they didn't. But
And wasn't Marvel the one that kind of coined the term multiverse? I mean, that
Might be.
whole Spider-Man and all the different Spider-Mens, isn't that where that comes from?
No, I'm pretty sure that was DC that originally came up
Was
with
it?
multiverse.
Okay.
I seem to remember reading about that once, but I could be wrong. Generally speaking, though, if both DC and Marvel have done it, DC came up with it first. I'm not exaggerating.
It's a pretty good rule of
I
thumb.
once went through and I was like, there's so many matching superheroes. You know, you've got Hawkeye and Green Arrow. You've got all these various characters, and I was like, I wonder who did it first. And I went through and it's like, yeah, with
Usually
almost
DC.
no exception. Spider-Man is the major exception, where it's like there is a version of Spider-Man in the DC comics that is just a straight up Spider-Man knockoff.
Really?
Only he's a villain. he's the one that you'll ever find that, nope, yeah, that started in Marvel and then DC ripped it off. But at the same time, I was like, well, I can't fault them because Marvel has so heavily ripped off everything DC ever did, ever. And and to their credit, a lot of Marvel's most popular stuff has been the stuff that is more unique and doesn't have a straight analog in DC, like Hulk and Spider-Man and stuff. But anyway, so you've got these superhero universes. You've got where they just flood every corner of the market they can with, here's a different version of this. Here's a Batman for kids. We've got, looking at television and movie stuff, it's like we've got Batman the Brave and the Bold, which is designed for a somewhat younger audience, but still accessible to adults, but definitely not made for adults. And then we've got, you've got the DC Supergirls series, which is very much for younger kids, especially aimed at girls, and it brings in all these different female superheroes, but as teen versions of themselves, and except for the ones that already were teens that remain teens. But so they flood every single. They just got so many different versions of these out there, so that they can give everybody what they want. And I think, all in all, it works pretty well. Nobody, well, not nobody, but most people will say, yeah, I love Batman. And if you really press them, they'll go, okay, well, yeah, there's versions of Batman I don't care for. And if they really if they're really familiar with the comics and stuff, they can be more specific, where I'm like, I do not like the Killing Joke. I think the Killing Joke is it's awful in so many ways. Batman stories, it's some of Alan Moore's weakest work that he ever put out. He has gone on record as agreeing with that. He doesn't like it that much.
Interesting, because that's one of the more praised.
It is heavily praised, and that's fine. Like, it's got its strengths, and I can kind of see it. And a lot of the reasons I don't like it aren't like writing reasons, although there are plenty of those to dislike it. It's mainly it gave the Joker a backstory, and I didn't care about the backstory. Like, it just was giving the Joker a backstory is never a good idea in my opinion, and so I read that and was just sort of eh. And then like the way it used Barbara Gordon is really problematic. It's just all over the place and weird. The new animated version of it even more so, ironically. It's like, I don't know how you take something that was problematic when it was made in the 80s and make it even more problematic now. Like that just seems really tone deaf. But anyway, so I don't like that one, I don't really care for certain incarnations of Batman, but others I like the Long Halloween. All right. I love Hush, when the original Hush where they introduced that. Don't care about Hush Returns, so I just ignore that one's existence. I love Tom King's current run of Batman. A lot of people really do not. And so they go pick up Batman Detective Comics or whatever. Or maybe they go pick up the Nightwing comics or the Batgirl comics, because in addition to all the different versions of Batman, you've got all the different Batman knockoffs that are running around as canon, and it's just all over the place with so much stuff. And I could kind of picture them doing that with Star Wars in the future. I've said a couple times this, like I could see them. We were talking about the comics a while back, and the one that they were the traditional original Star Wars comic run that they were going to do a special edition issue of, adding to that story. And I could totally see them going, you know what? Eventually, we're going to wholesale bring back the Legends universe and start producing more stuff in that universe. Because there'll be we're going to set up our own universe as our main one, and then we'll gradually bring back that one if there's enough market demand for it and we can make money off of it, and we'll keep making Star Wars everything for everyone. We'll have more kiddie versions, we'll have more adult versions, we'll have even more adult versions, like I said in one of our other episodes. Someday we're going to get a rated R Star Wars movie, because there are people who want that.
Yep.
And they'll just keep spreading it out, and so it won't be, oh yeah, I love every version of Luke Skywalker out there. It'll be, I love many versions. There are so many versions of Luke Skywalker running around, and I like most of them, so I can just say I like Luke Skywalker. But if you press me, there are versions of him I don't like, and if you get a couple people together, they will never agree on all the versions of Luke Skywalker they do like and don't like.
A great example of that, I was talking with... for those of you who are coming to our event on May 4th from 4 to 8 p.m. at the Spanish Fork Dragon's Keep.
In 4 days.
4 days, something like that. So this is posting on Wednesday. The event will happen on Saturday, so whatever that is. I was talking with Leader. He's the owner of the store, buddy of mine. He'll be there, so if you're there, you'll get to meet him. We were talking about Star Wars in general and the event. I was there talking to him, just getting some details nailed down and whatever. And we got talking about the Clone Wars. And it came up that when people ask me, do you like the Clone Wars? I say yes, because the first thing that pops into my mind is the Clone Wars TV show. Or do you like the prequels? Excuse me. Kyler, do you like the prequels? And I go, yeah, because in my head, the first thing that comes to mind is the Clone Wars TV show. And I think it's fantastic. I like Anakin there. But then if I stop and think about it and I go, well, I don't like Jake Lloyd's Anakin. I'm not a huge fan of Hayden Christensen's Anakin. But I do like Anakin overall because I've got 6 seasons, soon to be 7, worth of Clone Wars Anakin. And I like him a lot.
Yeah.
So I do like the prequels, but it's because I'm going, well, of all of the prequel content out there, 7 seasons compared to 3 movies is an overwhelming majority. So yeah, I do like Anakin.
Yeah.
I do like, whatever else. Padme even is significantly better because of the Clone Wars, even though she's kind of useless and a dud and stupid in the movies.
Very much so.
And so, so that kind of thing is definite. And I think I'm also not alone. I think most people that like the prequels are fans of the prequels because of the Clone Wars. Because I think the Clone Wars raises up the entire prequel trilogy. Because if I treat episodes 2 and 3 as just the first episode and last episode of Clone Wars TV show, they're even better. You know what I mean? And then episode 1 is sort of like a prequel movie to the Clone Wars TV show. And that's, I think, at least based on my experience talking to many, many Star Wars fans over the years, I think that is a not uncommon feeling towards the prequels.
Well, yeah. And for me with the prequels, it's just like, no, it's just that I've had enough years and I've analyzed those thoroughly enough that I can comfortably just go, yeah, it's Star Wars, there's still elements I love, and the rest is not great. I'm not a fan of the prequels per se, except in as much as they are Star Wars.
Right, but what I'm saying is it takes it from that level where I normally would be, where it's just kind of like, yeah, they're okay, it's Star Wars, so I like it, to, no, I view this favorably rather than indifferently because of the Clone Wars TV show.
Yeah.
But it's that specific interpretation of the universe that raises the entire universe for me.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like a healthy approach to Star Wars is going to increasingly be grab the parts you love, those are made for you. If you don't love the other parts, you don't need to throw a fit about it, just move on.
Well, and even with my own Star Wars consumption, that is how I do it. Where I'm kind of like, I'm like, hey, I've got 3 hours to watch a movie. I want to watch a Star Wars movie. Yes, I can see the prequel movies sitting there staring me in the face, but I'm probably going to pick Return of the Jedi because that's my favorite. That's the one I like, so when I've got time, that's how I'm going to spend it. Not that I necessarily hate the prequels, and there are times where I'm like, it's been 3 years since I've watched a prequel movie, not counting Star Wars Day. So yeah, I'll watch episode 2 or whatever because it's better than 1. But
no, it's not. We've already established this, man.
But yeah, there it is.
Hobart agrees with us.
Hobart can be wrong, and is often. Oh, good old Hobart.
But yeah, I think part of how it'll help in the future if they go that route, and for people to realize that, is like, it's one of those things where you won't. It'll lead to less anger because it will decrease people's need for 100% completion. Where it's like once you realize that this is not one narrow, it's like we're putting out one thing at a time, and everything that comes out you have to like, and this is just here we're throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks, and you look through that and go, I'm gonna pick that one up now. Hey, I'm hearing really good things about this, so I'm gonna pick this up. I'm sure there's someone out there who is the exception to what I'm about to say, but generally speaking, I feel it accurate to say that nobody has consumed every bit of Batman media out there. Like, it would be almost a physical impossibility. Like, there's just not enough time in...
You'd have to be independently wealthy, so you can just read it all day.
Basically, independently wealthy but pathetic. Like, not so independently wealthy that you actually want to use that wealth for all the amazingly fun things you could use it for. You're just going to use it to watch more and more and more Batman. And I say that as a person who makes producing and consuming media a very central portion of my life.
And here's the thing we should make clear. If you're independently wealthy enough to do nothing but read Batman, you're probably independently wealthy enough to become Batman.
That's why you read. It's part of your training, Ross.
But if you are independently wealthy enough to do that, and you're listening to this, then you're also probably independently wealthy enough to finance our podcast. So hey.
Do it. Hey, yeah.
We hope you like what you're hearing. Ignore the fact that I just called you pathetic. And
Oh man.
If you'll finance the podcast, I'm sure these guys will kick me off to suit you.
Exactly, yeah. Your will be done. Oh man. Sometimes this podcast. No, I mean it's true, and I, in preparation for this episode, was thinking about what you just said, because you've said it before. And I don't even care. I mean, whatever they produce, I'll eat up, and because it's just. I mean, I've already had to go through this with the prequels.
Yeah.
There are things about Star Wars that I like better than others, and the things that I don't like as much, they get less viewing time, less interaction, than the others. They're still there. I still know about them. I still love them, but I just don't interact with them as much.
So I think that's a good segue into one of the other things we wanted to talk about. As long as we're done with that topic. Fatigue.
Yeah.
So cool. We're talking a lot about with the Marvel, in particular Marvel movies,
so
is the superhero fatigue, and is that going to happen to Star Wars?
Not before we started recording, because we had like a 45-minute Endgame discussion before we decided to start recording the actual podcast. So Chris and Ross both went to see it today, right?
Mm-hmm. I saw
it. Chris saw it the day before today, or yesterday, and then
so I saw it on Friday, the day after it came out.
Right, and then Ross saw it this morning before we recorded.
Yep.
I am so tired of all of the Marvel movies, and that's not to say that I haven't enjoyed them, because I have. I've not watched a Marvel movie and gone, boy, I wish I hadn't seen that.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not hating them. I've gone, okay, that was time spent. Sometimes well or better than others. But I'm so tired of Marvel movies because there have been so many to go through, and where 22? I'm not as 22, and where I'm not as passionate about Marvel as I am about Star Wars, my ability to be fatigued by them is greater. And so, like, for instance, Black Panther, I think I saw Black Panther right before it went out of theaters, because I'm like, I kind of need to, because I'm about to go see Infinity War in a couple months, but I still hadn't seen Thor Ragnarok. And so then Ragnarok was on Netflix, and I was like, oh, we're going to go see this in a couple of days. We're going to go see Infinity War. I guess I should probably watch Ragnarok, huh? So watched it on Netflix. Fell asleep halfway through, didn't even bother to go, finish it, woke up towards the end, and I'm like, I get most of what's going on. Okay. And then went and watched Infinity War. I still haven't seen Captain Marvel. I haven't seen Infinity War. I will probably drag myself... Endgame. I have not seen Endgame yet. I didn't go see it opening weekend. I don't really want to go see it because I'm so tired of these movies. And I told you guys too, Phase 1 Marvel, I felt the movies kind of had each their own unique flavor. And then after Phase 1, they all started to feel kind of the same.
They do start to blend.
And so I'm like...
Which is one of the ways that Black Panther really stood out, is that
and that's
really
true.
It
did step away, and that's why I enjoyed Black Panther more than I thought I would. But I'm going, I just don't have a desire, because it's going to feel the same, and I've already seen this 10 times over, so, and I'll probably drag myself to see it just because, as you guys confirmed my suspicion, this is probably one that I need to just suck it up and go see on the big screen. It deserves a big screen viewing.
It deserves the spectacle.
But if not for that, I'd be like, I'll wait for Redbox or something.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of the Marvel movies.
See, and for me, it's like I when it first started, I wasn't really that into it. I was kind of like, I eventually got around to Captain America and Thor. And then Joss Whedon's Avengers, that got me on board, because it's...
See, and for me, stellar. I was kind of like, superhero movies, that's kind of interesting, and watched Iron Man 1, and I'm like, all right, I'm in. That was a good show. That was a good movie. I liked it.
Well, and the primary reason Marvel has been of interest to me over the long run is just the unprecedented scope of what they're trying to do.
Yeah,
Avengers I wanted to see because it's like we did a 5-movie lead into this, and we're bringing all the characters into one movie, and that sounds like a difficult balancing act.
It was a really interesting experiment.
Yeah, and as a writer, I wanted to see how they approached that and whether or not they could pull it off. Joss Whedon knocked it out of the park, and so I was like, okay, I'm on board all of a sudden. I really want to see more of this, and I've seen every Marvel movie that came out as it came out after that, for the most part. So I went through all those, and again, with the Infinity War and Endgame, it's part of it is the scope is like, okay, now we're going to bring together 18 movies into one with 30 plus superheroes and other characters all around them. And I was just like, okay, I gotta see how they're gonna do this. That is a huge amount of stuff to be trying to juggle at once. I think they generally did a really good job. I loved Endgame. But at the same time, the fatigue has been setting in, where it's like up the last couple years, especially once they kicked it up to 3 movies a year, where it used to be I saw all of them within like the first week of them hitting theaters. After the original Avengers movie, I saw all of them right away. I just started going, I'll see it whenever. I barely caught Thor Ragnarok while it was still in theaters. And
it was like over a year.
Yeah.
For me, like from the time it released to the time I saw it, it was like over a year before I saw Ragnarok.
And that's increasingly been the pace I go to, is like, oh yeah, I'll see him eventually. I caught Thor Ragnarok in theaters barely. Black Panther I only went to because Infinity War was coming out the next week. And then it was the same thing in this last year. I didn't see Captain Marvel until less than a week on Monday, just so that I'd have seen it before I went to Endgame, which you really don't need to, by the way.
No, you don't.
But
spoilers, guys, gosh.
No, just that.
I know
the themes and stuff introduced. Like there are like a few shots where it's like, okay, someone's looking at something and I don't understand the significance of that look, and you probably won't even notice it if you haven't seen Captain Marvel. But anyway, but that's never been the point. None of these movies really actually connect that heavily. It's not that important that you see them. But they've managed to create this illusion, this, the Pokemon gotta catch 'em all attitude.
Well, see, I've always felt that the Marvel movies up until this point has really been telling the story of the Infinity Stones, just as Star Wars, you could say, is the story of Anakin Skywalker, or I guess the Skywalker family. And so, I mean, you do want to see a lot of the previous Marvel movies for that story. You want to know what these stones are and what they're doing.
But what I'm also saying is that each of these very much functions as a standalone story.
Right. Whereas
you compare this to something like Game of Thrones or The Wheel of Time, you cannot pick up Book 8 of The Wheel of Time and have it make even the slightest amount of sense. And that's only halfway through the series, let alone by the end.
Yeah, let alone reading Book 15.
Yeah. Whereas if you had never seen any of the other Marvel movies, you could pick up Infinity War and muddle through. Like, there'd be a few things that you're like, I feel like there's references I'm missing here. But nevertheless, you'd get the gist of the plot. They establish within the movie, here are the MacGuffins that we're trying to gather. Here's what we can do with them. Here's why they matter. Okay, go run. And even Endgame, like Infinity War and Endgame are the first real pair of like first movies and sequels, second movie that you need to see together. But they're the only ones that are really full on. You will not understand anything unless you have seen the first one.
Well, I think, but isn't that still kind of true of the individual series? Like, I'm thinking Ant-Man 1 isn't really going to make as much sense unless you've seen Civil War. I'm sorry, Ant-Man 2 doesn't make as much sense if you haven't seen, well, even though they still do kind of explain it, because he's on house arrest because of Civil War, which was the Captain America.
But even then, they just established that it's just like, hey, he broke the law.
Yeah.
And they establish within the movie most of the... And again, it's not perfect. There is some reliance. They do know that their audience will have seen these things, but it's not a 100%. They're still specifically constructing these to be accessible to anyone who just decided to jump in right here. And that's fine too. I mean, like, you look at Terry Pratchett's Discworld novels. Like, the man is a master of satire and fantasy writing. And it's
rest in peace.
Beautiful, lovely stuff. Like, I love Discworld. I picked up, I think out of the 40 odd Discworld books that there are, I picked up like the 32nd for my first one. And it was actually, it's the Moist von Lipwig books was the first one I picked up, was Making Money. And there are currently 3, and I guess that's all there will ever be, pending unless his estate decides to authorize someone else to start writing them, in which case I don't care because it's not actually Terry Pratchett. Yeah. But, so there are 3 Moist von Lipwig books. I picked up the second one first. I had no idea. I just heard that these books were good, so I picked that one up, and I loved it. It did not hinder me at all that I hadn't read the first Moist von Lipwig book, let alone the rest of Discworld, because he constructed them all to be very accessible. So they are a series of interconnected but not interreliant novels.
And I did the
that
Guards
on the top of my head, and I'm really proud of that. Interconnected but not interreliable.
I did the Guards series, and now that you're mentioning it, all of them were very much that way.
Yeah.
Yes, they would reference earlier books because the characters do progress over the series, but it wasn't.
Yeah. The first Guards book that I picked up was Snuff, which I think is the last of those. Maybe
last or second to last. It's one of the later ones.
One of the later ones, yeah. And so
I had a similar experience with another. It's still one of my favorite series I've ever read, the Empire series. So it was Raymond Feist.
Oh yeah, Feist.
So he, back in the 80s, had a D&D campaign with his friends that he then turned into a novel. Well, actually, two different series of novels about these worlds that are connected by a magical rift. So he writes a quartet of books from one world's perspective about this war between these worlds, and then a trilogy about the other world's perspective of this war.
Yeah.
And I remember my aunt, there was like a library doing like a book sale where they like rip off the covers of the book or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And she brought me like 3 books. One was a bounty hunter book about Boba Fett. One was this, I later learned, was the 3rd and final book in the Empire trilogy. But since it had no cover, didn't know what it was called. Didn't know, anything about it, and then another one was a book that I've been looking for ever since and can't find it. It was a collection of short science fiction stories, and they're fantastic. And I can't, since it had no cover, I have no idea what it was called, and I've been looking ever more. Anyway,
you need to tell me about those. I might be able to find it for you.
Yeah, that would be that's a good idea after the show.
Well, let's just do it on the air.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, this episode is full of tangents anyway. Yeah. But I remember reading that 3rd book and being like, this is a fantastic story, and I didn't feel like I missed too much out of it. I gathered about halfway through the book that I'm like, okay, this is clearly a part of something bigger, and I don't know where it is in the story, you know? But it still made enough sense that I was like, okay, this is a really good book. And I read it like 3 or 4 times. I loved it so much. And then I was like in our school library or something like that and saw the spine of the book. And I'm like, wait,
that matches.
That's the book that I have at my house. Okay, what is, okay. And then got the inside cover of the front cover. And I'm like, okay, oh, this is book 3. Oh, awesome. And then I went back. So it was kind of actually similar to how I watched Star Wars, where as a kid I had 5 and 6, had no idea about 4 or anything that happened in it. And so then I went back and reread those. Then I'm like, wow, this is a great series. Oh, wait. It's got this little tab on the beginning of the first one. Hey, if you enjoyed this book, go check out the Rift War series. I'm like, wait, there's more? Went and read those and ended up reading, like 12 books in this greater universe for it, But it started with the final book in a trilogy that in the greater timeline was about book 7 or something like that out of like 12 or 13 books, And it's just fantastic.
Yeah. If I were to introduce specific terminology, which none of it is official, but I would say like you've got series and then you've got collections. Yeah. Where like a series is something where everything is interconnected and you need to read it all in sequence. Like you cannot pick up an episode from the middle of season 3 of Breaking Bad and have it make sense. Like you might get depending on the episode you pick, you might get something that stands alone on its own, but most likely you won't. You need to watch it from the beginning through. Whereas if you're in the middle of Discworld or the middle of the Rift War books, a lot of books do that specifically because the publisher is uneasy about, we don't know how many of these we want to make. We don't want to guarantee that there's going to be. We want them to be able to stand alone so that if we have to cut you off because you're not making us enough money, we can. And I would call that a collection. And the Marvel movies in that sense are very much a collection. Mm-hmm. They are all they stand alone, but they have plenty of Easter eggs and interconnections and everything. Right. And so
you read the Empire series, didn't you, Chris?
I did read I actually read the first 2 and I never finished the 3rd one. But yeah, you introduced those to me. Yeah. So
they're great. I highly recommend reading those books, by the way.
We still haven't gotten to the meat of our question, though. Is
Star
fatigue. Wars in danger of having this happen to them?
As far as fatigue goes, part of the reason I think that Marvel is hitting such fatigue right now is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where I feel like generally speaking, nobody gets Batman fatigue, right? And partly that's because nobody feels compelled to pick up every single piece of Batman property, because we know that Batman's just everywhere. We'll see something Batman-y and we'll go, oh, I am intrigued by that. I'm going to pick that one up. We'll see something else and go, I don't got time. That doesn't look like it's made for me, and move on. And part of the transition from comics to movies has shifted the Marvel stories that were created in a very haphazard, for everybody to pick up what you want manner, and put them in a format where people feel a need for the gotta catch them all.
Yeah.
And that's part of what introduces the fatigue, is this feeling that people have that they have to see all of them.
Well, and that's exactly it, because where comics before, I mean, it's like, well, if you're into those Marvel comics, great. You'll find those people that are into Marvel comics and you'll have a good conversation with them, and that's that.
Or you'll have a screaming
or you have well, there's different
match,
definitions of good conversation.
Yes.
Sometimes that means a good argument. But where they are now blockbuster movies that are a part of the wider cultural zeitgeist, and when everybody at your work is talking about Endgame and you're the only person who hasn't seen it, there is that sort of social pressure to be like, geez, maybe I need to go see this just so I know what people are talking about.
Well, and even then, just the people like to be able to catch those references and Easter eggs and everything. It makes them feel like they need to see all of these. I was talking to the woman I work with, and she was asking me. She's like, okay, so she was making plans over the radio at work and saying like, my brother unexpectedly got tickets for Endgame for Sunday night. I wasn't planning on seeing it for a while, but I haven't seen Captain Marvel. And I was just like, well, you really don't need to. Like, I have seen both of them at this point, and I can tell you that it won't really impact your Endgame experience significantly if you haven't. And she was like, oh, I know, but I want to. And I was like, I get you there. Like, that's the same reason I went to Captain Marvel on Monday in advance of Endgame, is because I was like, no, I want to get those Easter eggs. I want to get the references and understand every little facet of what's going on, not just the parts pertinent to the plot. That completion,
and that's me with Star Wars.
People who play video games, we understand the completionists, the 100%ers, that it's like, you got to get everything. And most of us over time learn to get over the 100%ing just through sheer force of growing up and not having enough time and not having enough time, energy to devote to 100%ing a game, and then also eventually reaching a point where we realize we learn to recognize the kind of the Skinner box techniques, the conditioning that's being used to push people through these games, and realize, wait, I've hit the point where this isn't actually fun. I'm just doing it to push those numbers up. I'm gonna walk away. We learn to do that over time, but there's a huge chunk of the population that hasn't been trained via video games to learn to ignore objective conditioning, and that hasn't been through all of that, and is just got that Skinner box going on, where it's like, I need all of it. I need to 100% it. I need to keep going and make sure I've got everything. Or the social pressure, like you said, of I don't want to be left out. Other people will know things that I don't know. And it's like, if you stop and think, it's like, everybody knows things I don't know. Everybody. Why does that bother me so much?
So about Star Wars, and this was kind of an interesting thing that I noticed, because when Disney said, hey, we've bought Star Wars, we're going to be making new Star Wars movies, I thought, thank all the gods that there are and the Force that there's going to be more Star Wars. This is something I will never, ever get sick of. Just like a kid on like Easter or Christmas morning that looks at all the candy they have and they're like, sweet, unlimited candy, I will never get sick of this. And then they eat 5 pounds of candy and they go, I'm good for a while. And so like episode 7 came out, and I, along with everyone else, was stoked because it had been like 15 years or whatever since the last Star Wars movie. And it was great, and it was awesome. And then a year later, we get Rogue One, and I'm like, sweet. It's been a year since I've had a Star Wars movie. Fantastic. Give me another one. Okay, then we go another year, and I get episode 8. And I was apprehensive, but still excited because it's new Star Wars. Left disappointed. And then...
Wasn't Solo first?
Nope. Solo came
Solo
6
came
months
later.
later.
And then 6 months later, and I remember before episode 8 came out, I was like, how amazing is this? We get episode 8 in December, and then I don't have to wait a year. It's only 6 months away till Solo. How awesome is this? And I remember leading up to Solo not feeling as excited as I was, and I sort of assessed my feelings. I'm like, I know part of it is because I feel burned by episode 8 and what it did to my franchise. But also, I'm like, I can feel in my soul that I have not had enough time to work up the level of excitement that I anticipated having for Solo. With only 6 months, if it had been a year, if I was seeing Solo in December, I can tell that I would be more excited for this movie. And I was excited for Solo,
but I mean, in contrast, like, I loved episode 8, but going into Solo, I was just sort of, whatever, we'll see.
Yeah.
You just had it.
And there's a lot of things going into that, too, where it's just like, nobody really asked for that Solo movie. That's a huge part of it. It didn't get marketed well, and it was famously ridden with production problems left and right. And so nobody had a lot of faith in it if they were paying at all any attention to that.
We've talked
but then
about
again,
the
so was Rogue
problems.
One, and that did fine.
Yeah, we've talked about the problems a little bit before, but I think you and I would probably both agree that in sort of a self-assessment going into Solo, that there was a little bit of it. Just we just had a Star Wars movie.
But you know what? For me, that wasn't even really.
I was
going
to say, I didn't really have.
Yeah.
It wasn't a fatigue thing for me.
Yeah.
It was a little bit for me, and I was surprised. I was really surprised to find that feeling in myself, where I was going, I'm just not excited for Solo. Why am I not as excited for Solo as I was for Rogue One, which is another spin-off movie, you know? And I remember thinking, well, it kind of feels like I just had a Star Wars movie, because like Episode 8 was in December, it's in theaters for 2.5 months. Then a month after that, I mean, I just bought the DVD yesterday, and now we have a month to go till Solo. It feels like I just got done with Episode 8. And now I'm going into another one, which hasn't got me enough time to work up my usual level of excitement for a Star Wars movie. And now it's been almost a year since Solo has come out. Almost a year. You know, by the time this airs, it'll be almost a month.
May,
less than a month.
It was in
away.
May last year, yeah.
And it's like, okay, but by...
Was it last year?
Yeah.
I feel like it's been out forever.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is it's been almost a year.
But it feels like longer than that for me. For some reason.
And so now I'm going, but by the time Episode 9 comes out, it's going to be a year and a half. Actually, a little over a year and a half, because May is the 5th month. But I'm like, okay, so 17 or 19 months or something like that till the next one. All right, that's okay.
Well, I feel like a year is often a pretty decent pace. Whereas part of the Marvel problem is they push to 2 and then 3 a year. And that's part of why it's like the only reason I hit all of those movies is because they had the big event movies of Infinity War and Endgame that I really wanted to see, and so I watched the others in prep for those. Ant-Man and the Wasp, I got that from the library. It's like it came in, and I took advantage of the fact that I know all the people that I work there, and just went, hey, I'm just going to take this before you even put it down on the shelves. Okay, cool. Jump me up to the front of the whole pile, thanks. And that was nice.
Well,
Perks.
and then also with Star Wars, you had sprinkled throughout, you had Rebels, 4 seasons of Rebels, and then now a season of Resistance. But to me, it's still not the same thing as having another movie. Like, I don't know why, because it's still Star Wars, and I still feel like
Star
I
Wars
need to
started
watch it.
as movies.
Yeah.
Like, Star Wars is a movie franchise. Everything else is ancillary.
Yeah, and so I'm going, I've had fairly consistent Star Wars in my life, even between movies, because of the TV shows, but it didn't, I guess, where it's like a weekly thing and it's only a few minutes, it's 22 minutes or whatever. Well, it's not that bad.
I think there are also different classes of things that you're excited for, right?
Because, and I was going to say, the anticipation
movie,
for a TV show or a new season or a new episode of that is way different than the next installment of the saga, Episode 8, whatever. And so that's why I'm looking at this going, we've got season 2 of Resistance this fall and The Mandalorian, but I still don't feel like that's overwhelming. But if they were releasing like Marvel's schedule where it's 2 to 3 movies a year, Star Wars, I'd be like, whoa. And this is why I was so glad a few weeks ago when we talked about Bob Iger's announcement that we're pulling back a little bit on Star Wars. We're going to take a little bit of a break. We don't know how long, but I would imagine a couple years after Episode 9 comes out, we're going to take my guess is probably between 2 to 4 years.
Yeah, I'd say 2 or 3.
And then we'll have... I wanted to say 2 to 3, but I'm like, they might do 1 more year just to make sure.
I would wager after Episode 9, within a year, we'll get an announcement of at least what the plans are. Like, we're going to start, but then it's still going to be like a 2-year production.
Yeah. Because we know that the Game of Thrones creators have not yet started production of theirs yet. They're still, I think, in just like the writing, like the story phase or whatever for their trilogy. And so I'm like, and I'm really glad that they decided to do that, because the fatigue discussion around Marvel was already flying fast when Episode 8 came out. And people were then already, when Episode 8 came out, a year and a half ago almost.
Well, especially with Episode 8 followed by Solo within 6 months.
Right. People were already making the comparison between Star Wars and Marvel and saying, ooh, are people getting tired of Star Wars already? And that's why I'm so glad Bob Iger was like, you know what, we're going to just nip that in the bud. Maybe you're not feeling fatigued, but just in case, we're going to take a break. and give people a chance to get excited for more. Because I can already tell you, after 9 comes out, if there's a 2 or 3 or even 4-year break before the next major movie, I'm going to be stoked out of my mind for that next movie to come out. You know
what though? I wonder, when you say major movie though, do you mean like a...
I mean like a live action, this goes to theaters, it's, it gets its NFL Super Bowl,
but like,
trailer.
Do you see it as being an episoded movie, or would it be like Rogue
Well,
One
because
or
they've
Solo?
said I don't know, and that just gets into the
but that's the thing with
rumors,
what we already know is that the Benioff and what's the name, the Game of Thrones guy, Weiss, Benioff and Weiss are doing a trilogy.
Yes, they're doing a trilogy,
and so is Rian Johnson. So I have a feeling they will be pretty epic in scope, similar to what we've seen from Star Wars in the past. As much as they'd like to tout Episode 9 as the closing of the saga, I'm just like, no, it's just the end of another trilogy.
The closing of the Skywalker saga.
But that's bull.
Yeah,
that's
and
bull.
so
It always has
Ray,
been. It always will be.
And that's. I guess I should have asked for clarification, because when you say episode whatever, I think that and this is my read on Disney's statements regarding the close of the saga or whatever, is that the episode whatever, blah blah blah, that refers specifically to the Skywalker saga.
Right. Yeah.
So there won't be Star Wars Episode 10, Game of Thrones edition Episode 1, whatever.
It'll be Star Wars of Thrones 1, 2,
exactly.
and 3.
Something like that. Yeah, exactly.
Similar to the way they do books. It'll be, it's like, all right, we're going to do a trilogy about this. We're going to do a trilogy about this, and we'll get various series of movies. But
I feel like they're just getting started with Rey, Finn, and Poe, though.
Well, that comes down to a problem of pacing and storytelling within this trilogy.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to be like, oh, well, good job on Episode 9, guys. Okay, now let's tell a Finn and Poe story. Like, that. Well, that's just continuing the whole thing,
Well, sort of.
But also, I think Disney... So, and this, boy, how many times do we say this on the show? This ties into something we've talked about before. But with the whole battle over nostalgia here, people have an image in their head of how Luke Skywalker should be, how Han Solo should be, how Leia should be, how their kids should be, who we haven't even seen yet, but their kids should be in this mold or that mold. And Rey should be a Skywalker or a Kenobi or a whatever. Hopefully she stays a nobody, right? And I think Disney is saying, you know what? Let's cut the nostalgia, stay in the Star Wars universe, but let's go tell an Old Republic story. Let's go tell a century from now story. I really hope so. Let's go tell it. Well, and that's the strong rumor, is that the Game of Thrones guys are telling a beginning of the Old Republic 1,000 generations before story set in that time period that is so completely removed that, hey, do whatever you want with these characters, because there can't be any preconceptions. They're so far removed from everything you already know.
Yeah, the Knights of the Old Republic.
Exactly. So all you really have preconceptions for is there's going to be the Force, because this is the Star Wars universe.
That was a bit of news we forgot. By the way.
We're
doing that later.
That's a next time.
Sorry, spoilers.
Or not next time, 2 weeks from now. But we'll talk
Maybe
about that
we'll do news
in a
at the beginning of our event. But
so,
but it also depends on Episode 9. Like, I could see Episode 9 wrapping up pretty well on the new generation that they've been showing us, and leaving them tied off well enough that we don't feel a pressing need to continue their story on any further. Because that's part of the thing too, is like part of these series that grow and grow and grow, and they just end up stretching their characters out so much that it's like,
how much can you fit in one lifetime?
Exactly. And so I feel like we want to see more of the characters we love, but an inevitable result of getting more of the characters we love is inevitably we don't love it anymore. Last Jedi. And yep, that happened for a lot of people, and it's you die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain, or live long enough to see yourself become not what people wanted or whatever. And
I think we call that the villain nowadays, Chris.
Not being what people want is villainous. Yeah, I will not subscribe to that. But it's
I haven't heard you say that in a long time.
Really?
Yeah.
I say that a lot. Wow. Prosta na prosta.
Yeah, for our listener, that's the
Pervert.
Russian version of
Yeah, basically. It just takes more syllables, so it feels nicer. I feel like if they did not overdo it with Rey and Poe and the others, or at least if they left that to the books and other tie-in stuff.
Well, and I wonder if maybe, here's more wild speculation from the Ross camp, but I wonder if... What?
I said unacceptable.
Only Kyler and I can wildly speculate.
Yes. Somebody has to be the voice of reason.
It's not going to be us.
I wonder if they will let Ryan still work with our new trio. I don't know if they would still be regular episodes. Like maybe not.
I don't think so. I
would...
thought they said that his trilogy is like totally unconnected from the current.
Yeah, that's what I
did they?
remember.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm pretty
okay.
sure they said that his. And
As I understand it, they're basically letting him do what he wants. It's just like, look,
Yeah.
bring us a story you want to tell. It'll still have to go through heaps
Yeah,
of
yeah,
loops to get approved by
but it's
all
basically
of the
just
bean counters.
an unconnected to
Yeah.
the current anything.
I mean, and, maybe that could change in the future if he came to them as like, wait, I had an idea for Ray and Finn and Poe, and
I just feel like Disney's not done with that trio yet, though.
Well,
I mean, they're
episode
never going to
9.
be done with them.
No, but I mean, even as far as like movies go,
Nah.
I feel like we'll see.
Well,
them
I mean, there's
more.
potential, I suppose, for like a standalone movie, like a Poe, going out with Black Squadron, like
or even
I could
Finn
see
and Poe romance we've all been waiting for.
even a Rey starting the new Jedi Order. I would think, but that might do better in the books. I think that
I
might
don't know.
be a large
know.
set of movies if they were going to do it. But again, maybe they would want to.
I would think,
and maybe we'll get that in 9.
Yeah.
Like we don't know what 9 has in store.
I feel like a year would be too short for that to make sense.
I do too, but they've done a lot of other things that don't make sense,
Says you.
and a lot of other people.
who are demonstrably wrong.
Yeah, but not as many people as you think.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, and it's not even that. We've discussed a lot of these things.
Yeah.
They make sense when you look at them. Not all of them, I'll grant. But then again, it's Star Wars. We've got a whole episode devoted to all the ways that Star Wars does not make sense. So
Yep.
that we're planning. So
It's going to be so good.
It's
I'm
gotta
looking
be
forward
so
to that
much fun.
episode.
yeah. I was thinking though with the fatigue, and part of the reason I feel like Star Wars has potentially had fatigue setting in more quickly, or could have it set in more quickly than Marvel did, is the fact that Star Wars movies tend to be less varied so far than the Marvel movies originally did. Like I agree that
Yeah.
part of the Marvel movies' problems over time is that they all trended toward a very similar feel. But at least at one point you had a wide variety of, like, if you look at Phase 2 Marvel, like you had the Avengers team up, it was awesome. And then you got into, it's like we have Winter Soldier, which is basically a spy thriller
Yeah.
in the Marvel universe.
Well, and I
we
would say
had
there's
Iron
even
Man.
greater difference in Phase 1. Like Thor feels very different than Captain America, than Iron Man.
Yeah,
than,
they did. But I use,
you know.
but I mean, it kept going for a while there too, though. Where it's like, and I like those because like Winter Soldier is particularly like
Yeah.
the original Captain America was more of a war movie.
Mm-hmm.
The next one was a spy thriller. We had Thor was basically high fantasy in the Marvel universe,
Yeah.
and Doctor Strange is a different sort of high fantasy.
Yeah.
Is-
Then you get like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and Thor Ragnarok, and they're basically
yeah.
indistinguishable.
Well, and part of the reason that happened is because Thor had been struggling to find a footing that would appeal to mass audiences,
Yeah.
and so they basically just
Well,
ripped
but
off
that's
Guardians,
the thing is like by the time you hit Phase 3, every movie feels the same.
Yeah, but even then, like Guardians of the Galaxy was a good example where that was yet another different, like very very light, very it was more comedy
Yeah.
than most of the others had been. And I think the success of Guardians is part of what influenced the push towards more and more
I agree.
bathos and undermining of drama in
Right,
the
and I agree, but
universe.
I think that was to its detriment. Is they went,
Oh,
people
in the
really liked
long run,
this.
yes, I agree. In
'Cause
the
I
long
agree,
run,
like,
it
the first
tended
Guardians
towards
of the
sameness.
Galaxy was like, oh, that's a refreshing, different flavor for the Marvel
Mm-hmm.
universe. Awesome. And then they went, oh boy, that made a lot of money, and people liked it. Cool. Every movie now is going to get a big old heaping helping
Increasingly
of
so.
Guardians of the Galaxy
Yeah.
flavoring.
Increasingly so, they did become more and more similar. But for a while there, it was very like you could, even though so many of them were the same basic origin plot, they still felt different enough to run on. And I mean, Black Panther is the same origin plot as all the other ones we'd seen before that. Captain Marvel is that origin plot again. We all know the superhero origin movie plot at this point.
Right.
Captain Marvel tried really, really hard to disguise it under an amnesia plot, but unfortunately they chose the most cliche amnesia plot they could have, so it didn't really do that much originality-wise. But
See, and I haven't seen Captain Marvel either, so that just makes me laugh even harder.
it was
at the
like
movie.
it wasn't bad. I liked it, but it was very formulaic. Like
Right.
it was one of those where I was 10 minutes into the movie and I went, "Well, I know how this is going to end." I will say this for that one though. Like I said before in the Rogue One episode, I said that Ben Mendelsohn as director Krennic, I felt he was very strong in all of that. But Captain Marvel is the movie that made me go, I'm going to pay a lot of more attention to Ben Mendelsohn now. Because like that one was the movie that made me go see enough of him to go, I like this guy. This guy's got some range. Like he's impressive. I like Ben Mendelsohn. Anyway.
He plays also what I'm assuming is going to be a villain in Star Citizen in their campaign.
That's fun.
Yes, he does.
They've showed like a little trailer of it, and he's got a few lines, and I'm going, getting a shifty feeling from you, buddy.
Well, and I think it helps that he did that around the time that he would have done Star Wars, because he feels very Krennic in that as
That's
well.
exactly what I thought. I'm like, he feels like Krennic. I can't wait. I can't wait to see this guy. See what he does.
I think it's Krennic if Krennic was a better Krennic,
Yeah, could be.
I think is what it feels
And
like.
then
to
they
me.
have Sir Davos Seaworth as a foil for him
Yeah.
in Star Citizen, and then you have Luke Skywalker playing one of your co-pilot.
Well, that sounds pretty nice.
Go get Star Citizen, you nerds.
But yeah, so there was some variety to it, and I feel like inevitably that was going to crumble to a certain degree. It would all be. It doesn't matter what you're doing. The more you create of it, the more samey it will get. That is just what happens. And it doesn't matter if it's an author over various series. Like, I can pick up a Brandon Sanderson novel at this point and immediately just go, oh yeah, it's Brandon. It doesn't matter how hard he tries to branch out and everything. He's got certain unconscious things that he does that I can immediately pick up.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got certain themes that he just loves, and every author does that. You can pick up a David Eddings book and know immediately that it is a David Eddings book. You can do that left and right with most.
There's a
authors.
name I haven't heard in
Right,
a while.
yeah.
He writes good stuff. I like.
Yeah,
his stuff.
I love his stuff. Yeah, Cormac
Man.
McCarthy is similar. Like you pick up his stuff, you know it's his. They're left and right. They're all like this, and that's
Makes
fine.
me wish I had more time to read.
Yeah, I can recognize Joss Whedon immediately because I'm very familiar with his stuff. You learn their patterns and all of that. The more someone produces, the more familiar they're most likely going to get. That's not a bad thing because it's reassuring to people who like that. If you pick up a Louis L'Amour book, you know what you're getting. Even if it's not a Western.
Dude, great reference.
Wait, he writes other than Westerns?
Yeah, actually,
Wow.
one of the only Louis L'Amour books that I've read is a Cold War spy thriller about a man who crashes in Eastern Russia.
Has to live a cowboy life in
And
underdeveloped,
actually,
underdeveloped
it's very
Russian
similar.
wilderness.
He has Indian blood and is relying on his
Of course it is.
to survive and escape from Siberia. But
I love it. Hey, can
Yeah.
you write something that's not a Western? Yeah, sure. How about a spy thriller? Great. Okay, can the guy be a cowboy who crashes in there?
it was an Indian. Don't worry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Native American. But yeah, I mean, it's even when it wasn't explicitly a Western, you can still recognize Louis L'Amour in it, and that tends to happen for everyone. It's not a problem, but it's when you have things that are produced by committee, it can become a problem because committees already tend toward blandness.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because
you have
committees
to
are
find
the
the
worst
lowest
thing
common
ever.
denominator for everybody.
Well,
it's-
and just because meetings are horrible and wretched soul-sucking exercises
Yes.
in misery, and anything produced by meetings,
I
which
think
is
you're
what
too
committees
kind
come
for
into.
meetings.
Exactly, and inevitably, anything produced by a meeting will tend towards being lesser than it could have been.
Yep.
There's less chance for expression of individuality. It's part of why I feel the Guardians movies are some of the stronger of the later Marvel years, is because they gave James Gunn a lot of leeway to do what he wanted, which is why I'm glad he's back for the third one.
Yeah.
Yes,
But-
agreed.
But we'll still see because there's still that studio overseeing that, and that's the thing too. As I was watching, I watched a video on the production of Rogue One the other day, and which is interesting to me. I had not realized just how riddled with problems that was as bad as Solo went on the back end. It was just riddled with problems left and right. But again, it's one of those that the more I look at Rogue One, the more I'm like, I just wish I had been able to get one auteur, even not an auteur perspective, but I just wish they'd trusted the director to just do what he wanted with it. And because it was just, there's so much committee. There were so many writers and other people brought in to redo this or reevaluate that. Other directors brought in to help with this or that or the other. And it's a similar thing on Solo, where just so much of the studio's involvement is so heavy on those anthology films that I feel that's part of what makes them blander, where it's like, even if you don't like Last Jedi, you can certainly not argue that it's bland. Like it's very distinctive.
Yeah.
And I'm a little floored that, is the main movies, the big ones, are the ones that somehow got less studio pressure, And the anthology ones that were specifically intended to be more like out there and let's see what we can do with this are the ones that got detail.
Those ones tend to have the bigger names attached to them, though, right? Instead of having Ron Howard come in to save things, they have Ron Howard type people starting them off in the first place. I think the studios
Ron Howard
those
did
people.
bring it. He was like the third director attached to Solo.
Oh, I know.
No, he's saying like that the regular saga movies start off with a Ron Howard, whereas the
that's
anthologies start off
Well,
with somebody who
Ryan
is out there
Johnson-
and they bring in a Ron Howard.
That's the thing. But even with it, Ryan Johnson was a weird choice for that.
Yes.
He was.
I agree.
He was not the level of name recognition that you would expect for that. Which, so again, even there, it's like they not only gave it to someone relatively or comparatively unknown, they also just gave him so much license to do what he wanted with it. Whereas with these anthology films, by most of what we're hearing, there's so much studio pressure going, whoa, no, don't mess with that, don't mess with that, don't do that. Wait, change that, we don't like that, do this. And it's like, make these fit to the mold we want them. And I'm like, and it's part, but I feel like it adds to the overall sameness of Star Wars movies. Where it's like a lot of people talk about how, oh, Rogue One, yeah, it's a war movie and everything. And I'm like, it's not, though. It's a Star Wars movie with a bit of war flavoring. It's not a war movie with a Star Wars veneer, which is what I would have, like, if it had been that, I feel like I would have liked it more.
Yeah,
I agree. Well, and that's how it was originally billed, and then Disney scaled it back to make it more...
Exactly. And Solo was a similar thing, where if that had been a genuine heist movie with a Star Wars veneer, I would have been like, oh yeah, score, let's get this thieves and this cowboy western, let's do all of that. But instead it was like, whoa, no, don't do that, pull back on that, don't do this, don't do that, and just buff it all out until there's no personality here at all. And I would hope that if they are able to, if they stop and they put more planning into it, because there has been a certain amount of haphazard just running forward with this.
I think that's also why Bob Iger said, we're going to take a break for a minute as soon as we're done with the current project.
Where the Marvel movies have been meticulously planned from the very start.
Yes, and I think Disney going forward after 9 is going to be like, okay, what is your overall story for all 3 movies, Benioff and Weiss?
Yeah.
Let's make sure that like it's all ironed out, all the problems are taken care of before we go spend movies and have to reshoot.
Well, and again, the thing there too is they're giving Benioff and Weiss a trilogy. It's not the, like with the old Star Wars movies, the originals, it was George is making these movies, but he brought in other directors to direct 5 and 6, which was to the original trilogy's credit, I think. Yes. But it still had him in charge of the overall production, so it kept it consistent. And I feel like a lot of people look at the prequels where George wrote and directed everything, and obviously that was not to the strength of the prequels. And so I feel like part of what shaped their decision-making with the sequel movies is they went, okay, yeah, we're going to switch up directors every time like what they did originally. But they didn't have anyone overseeing it all to be like, whoa. They didn't have their Kevin Feige from like over at Marvel. And, it's like Kevin Feige at the beginning for phase 1 and then Joss Whedon for phase 2 going, okay, here's phase 2. And then the Russo brothers for phase 3 going, okay, here's what we're doing now. They just have JJ doing his best to like, okay, I'm producing everything, but at the same time, I'm not really in charge here per se, except on this one movie. I wasn't even planning on being part of 9, but now I'm back. Like, it's a lot more up in the air, and ostensibly Kathleen Kennedy would be filling that role, but I don't really feel like that. She's more on the business end of a lot of this, I feel like, and not necessarily on the story end. I could be wrong. I don't know. That's my speculation, but I feel like hopefully in the future, they'll be able to stop and go, okay, Benioff and Weiss are doing this trilogy. They get to oversee all of these. It's a production by these people who will have primary creative control over it. And whether it does well or not, it's on them and not the studio constantly meddling, hopefully. Same thing, Ryan Johnson has his trilogy, gets to do what he wants. We'll have, and maybe it won't even be like we're trying to make this huge arc like we did with Marvel. It's just we're trying to bring out quality products.
Yeah.
And make sure that it's not have to worry about the massive interconnectedness of everything and this, that, and the other, which is one of the, it's one of the strengths of the Marvel Universe. And, I have to see that before I see this. But in the long run, isn't indefinitely feasible. Like, inevitably, that's going to fall apart. People are already getting too fatigued. People who were driven by that before are increasingly reaching the point of, it's like I saw Endgame and I'm good. Do not need to see every Marvel movie from here on out. I might see them if they get well reviewed, but I'm probably not going to pick up every single one. The whole 100% completionist as a motivational tool against me has officially broken. Like, it does not work anymore. I've reached my limit on that. I'm done. I made it through to Endgame, and for a lot of people, especially, they gave them a stopping point. They know that that's coming, I'm sure, but...
Yeah. This might be a little bit off topic, but it's something you said has kind of sparked a thought.
Off topic? We don't do off topic.
Well, yeah, I know. I find it interesting that we've just had this discussion about studio meddling and how it's been affecting films and kind of which films they seem to be more heavy-handed with and which they don't. Mm-hmm. So I think we reported it here, or maybe I was doing research for something for the podcast a while ago, where Disney has this whole list of rules that it'll hand out to people making movies for them of things they can't do. Pause real quick. Over the next 35 seconds, I discuss a major plot point in Avengers Endgame, a plot point that happens in the first about 20 minutes of the film. So if you are concerned about spoilers, this is your official spoiler warning. We discussed it after the podcast and felt we needed something a little more official to be interjected right here before I went through my discussion. So, again, if you want to go in completely unspoiled, skip the next 35 seconds starting now. One of the things on the list was no beheadings, which I found that funny because in Infinity War, Thanos mentions, you should have gone for the head, right? But that's one of the rules, is you cannot show a beheading in a Disney movie. Well, spoiler alert for the first, 5 minutes of Endgame, there's a beheading, and they are not shy about it. Well, I mean, it's not gratuitous, but
it's not Game of Thrones, but yeah.
So with Disney having this firm set of rules and then loosening them up on Marvel, I would assume that Disney handles Marvel the same way that it does Star Wars.
Relatively, yeah.
So how is it picking, and why does one project have the execs come down on it and others don't?
I am curious about that as well, because especially with Star Wars, where it's like it feels like they're coming down on the movies that they shouldn't be. And I think in the case of those, I think part of the reason, well, even that doesn't matter. I was going to say part of it is because Rogue One is so focused on events right next to Episode 4, and so they're really concerned about continuity and this, that, and the other. And because it was supposed to be a darker war movie, like the original script, they were like, yeah, we'll kill them all off in this, and we know Disney's going to say no, and Disney was like, no, we're okay with that. And they did not expect that. And Solo focuses on Han Solo, and Disney's all crapping their pants over, oh no, you can't mess with Han Solo. Like, look at how angry the Star Wars fans are already are about so many things. We can't mess with Han Solo. But unfortunately, not messing with Han Solo and kind of makes for a dull movie. Like, It's like, why did you make a Solo movie if you're not going to give me something new about Han Solo? Or at least not much new. And Rogue One, but at the same time, I'm like, but the sequel trilogy is using all of the original characters and extending their story further. So I don't feel like it's necessarily any less important how they are using those than it is with the others. I don't know how they choose. It seems really weird to me. If Rian Johnson hadn't been in charge of Episode 8, if it had been a more well-known director, I would be like, oh, that's why. JJ's already pretty well-known, and they got so-and-so for Episode 8. He's pretty well-known, whereas the directors for Rogue One and Solo, respectively, weren't very well-known. But then I'm like, no, Rian Johnson really wasn't either. Like, he was pretty critically acclaimed, but that was mostly for very un-Star Wars-y stuff, like episodes of Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know how they decided
stuff like Brothers Bloom.
Yeah, exactly. Or Looper, which is
rated and that was the thing, is that Looper didn't review very well.
Yeah, and it didn't.
A detriment.
It got mixed reviews, but I don't remember. But I never saw it, so. But yeah, I don't know how they're choosing that. It is really weird to me. But Disney, if you're listening, please just hands off. Like, maybe whatever gets produced will be horrible, but I would rather have something that tries something new and utterly fails than something that is just blandly pushed through. Like, I always think of the second Hobbit movie. I never even watched the third one. But the second Hobbit movie, part of my problem when I was watching that is I was just like, oh my word, this movie was just like, it is like someone had a list of, like some executive had a list of, oh, this is what's popular with people these days. Here, let's see. put a love triangle in there, can you? Let's do that.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see, what else can we fit in here? All this Occupy stuff is really big right now.
Yep.
Let's put in some class disparity that's in the favor of the direction that people prefer it to be right now. Okay, can we fit in some of this? Yeah, let's jam that. It's just like check. And then the end result is something that is just horrible, dull, and just so bad. And so I'm like, I would rather have something that at least, like, as much as it pains me to say it, The Last Airbender is horrible. The M. Night Shyamalan's Last Airbender. But at least I can look at that and go, I can see what this guy was shooting for. He knew that if he just aped the original series, he was never going to live up to it. It would just be mediocre, so he tried to do something different in hopes that it would stand on its own two feet.
I think it's the first time ever I've heard you say something positive
It
about
is the
that
only
movie.
good thing I have to say about that movie. And this is that I can understand why M. Night Shyamalan made the choices he made and what he was trying to do, and I can respect that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, every
result
choice
was
he did
terrible.
make was horrible, and he shouldn't have done. But at least his overarching goal of trying to make a movie that stood apart from its original and stood on its own 2 feet, I can understand. But yeah, it's like I would rather studio meddling rarely leads to good things, in my opinion. And so
I can't. I mean, well, yeah. There
In
are a
any
few
industry,
instances,
yeah,
where
like-
it has actually helped. But that's the thing, is it usually only helps in the you should cut this out. They never actually add anything.
Of
yeah.
value
Well,
back.
and
Yeah.
feedback is always solid. Like, if you've got a book author, most of them will send their book to their agent first, and some agents provide feedback and recommend changes, some don't. But if you take Brandon Sanderson for an example, like he writes his book, goes to his writing group, and most of whom are other writers, and they're all giving him feedback and saying, oh yeah, this isn't working, this is working, maybe you should change this, maybe you should try this isn't working for me. And so he does several drafts like that. He sends it out to some beta readers to get feedback on what is and isn't working, and he sends it out to his agent. His agent goes, okay, maybe fix this, maybe fix that. Then he gets it back, makes those changes, maybe sends it to some more beta readers, or maybe some gamma readers, I don't know, and then sends that on to his editor. His editor says, okay, now make these changes. I kind of recommend this. Maybe you want to do this, see how this isn't working. Like, there are just layer after layer after layer of feedback and recommendations and stuff. So that's not the bad thing. The bad thing about studio involvement, the studio with a capital S getting involved in the production, is that it's very rarely people with know-how of how to make a good story interfering in the story to make the story better. It's people who know, it's marketers who are going, no, that's not going to play well with audience according to the feedback we got on this, and this. So you got to scrub that out. You got to get rid of anything that could potentially be offensive to this, or that. You got to undo this. You can't say that. You can't do this. And it's executives going, oh yeah, I've been in this industry for ages. I know how to do this. And it's like, no, you've never actually been involved with making good quality material.
Yeah.
Well, EA's problem. But
Yep.
And so
That was for you, Lindsay. Can't go by with an episode without bashing EA.
But yeah, studio involvement is often people who aren't concerned with story meddling in story matters. And that, I think, is why it rarely leads to anything good. But hopefully, if they are going towards the more comic booky, superhero-y approach of let's have some of everything, we can have everything for everyone, and you don't have to get involved with everything, the Star Wars executives the studio with a capital S can go, well, you know what? It's okay if we leave that in here, because the people who don't like that will like this other thing that we're doing over here. We can pander to everybody instead of having to make every film as broadly appealing as possible and therefore as bland as possible. Don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yep.
But yeah.
So what did we talk about today?
We're talking about Star Wars and superheroes.
Batman. Avengers. Specifically Endgame. My Little Pony. What else we talking about?
We
Different
talked about
books, fantasy
Ryan
books,
Johnson's filmography.
Ryan
We
Johnson.
talked about
What is the lesson to take away from today,
The lesson
guys?
is maybe don't have such FOMO if you're feeling burned out on Star Wars, because I'd hate for you to actually get burned out on Star Wars. So maybe just chill
hopefully
out.
they're bringing things to a point, kind of like what they've done with. Maybe this isn't hopefully for some people. I'd be intrigued to hear why, but that not all Star Wars has to be everything for everyone. There will be so much Star Wars that you can just grab the parts you like you do with Batman. like you do with Spider-Man, and then move on and not feel this need for 100% completion that is inevitably going to burn you out.
Yep.
Hopefully that's the lesson that...
I think that's a very good lesson.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully that's the lesson that LucasArts is aiming for at this point. That they're that they are learning.
Lucasfilm.
Sure, whatever. The Lucas
Although
Company.
LucasArts does
I'm
it
just
too,
going to start
yeah.
referring to them all as Lucas Company.
Yes.
There you go.
Lucas
Lucasfilm.
amalgamation.
So, I think that's it, right?
I think so.
I got nothing else.
Until next
I didn't
week.
even write notes for this. You can
Well,
maybe
until
tell
Saturday.
after having
Yeah.
listened to this episode.
Yeah. So, be sure to follow us on Twitter at More Civilized. I'm just saying, we don't have as many Twitter followers as I think we should. So all of you that are out there, be sure to follow us so I can get an accurate head count for our listeners. Dang it.
Nobody has as many Twitter followers as they obviously should.
Well, I'm just looking at like our downloads and I'm going, the amount of Twitter followers we have cannot produce that amount of downloads. So we're missing people somewhere, clearly. And then also join our Facebook group, A More Civilized Podcast. It's very important to do these things. We say it every week, partly because I'm a petty, self-aggrandizing maniac, but also because it's where official announcements come from, like our event that is happening in a few days. So if you're not in the Facebook group, if you're not following us on Twitter, you're going to miss that information. Like I put out, not an ad, but I guess like a notice, whatever, a tweet with the a location, like with the address for the Dragon's Keep and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully you see that. Anyway, so join those two so that you're aware of what's going on.
Oh, is it my turn? Oh, right.
We have a shout.
Yeah, guys, it's been a week. I'm just going to say that right now.
Ross is in the process of big life changes.
Yeah.
So
Big life changes, and then another thing that would have been big life changes, but still may or may not. It's been a week. Yes, so today we would like to shout out to two of our listeners, Abinadi.
have fun with that last name.
Erdis? I'm so sorry. I'm sure I got that wrong.
I'm not even going to try. Hey, Abinadi.
Yeah, we still love you. And also
The fact
Kelsey
that you know how to pronounce his first name, though, is probably a rare treat for him.
Yeah. Depending on where you live.
I was going to say,
He lives in
not that
Texas.
hard around here.
Yeah.
He lives in Texas, so
there you
it's
go.
probably rare.
It'll be more unusual there.
Because we went to school. We called him Abby. Remember Abby?
Yeah. Oh, of
Wait,
course I
it's that
remember.
Abby?
No, it's not.
No.
No.
It's not.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I was real confused for a minute.
Anyway.
I was
we had a friend named Abinadi who went by Abby.
Yeah.
Until he decided, well, that's a girl's name. I don't want to be that. So he started going by his actual first name. Abinadi was his middle name. His first name was Salvador.
yeah.
But then, of course, people started calling him
Was that
Sal.
when that happened?
Yeah.
Sal.
I remember the
Sally.
first time I heard someone call him that, and I was like, oh, no.
Anyway, no, because both of Abinadi and Kelsey. Did I say Kelsey? You were also shouting out Kelsey. Sorry,
Okay,
Kelsey.
cool.
Because
so glad you can make it on Saturday. Can't wait to
Yes.
meet you.
I particularly enjoyed that instead of just posting memes, they were actually posting stuff from the episode that they
Yeah.
particularly enjoyed.
Yeah, that
Such
was
as Abinadi did a Kyler quote in talking about Carrie and I. It says, "Ross, your love is disgusting." And when he posted this, it took me a minute to remember where that was said. And then it was just the episode before.
Abinadi will forever be emblazoned in my memory as the man who called me out on Harry Potter. I was like, dang it. Yeah. Ever since we did that episode, I was like, I ended up just ranting about the movies for way too long. I didn't really get into why I like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And he mentioned that, and I was like, dang it, someone noticed.
But then also Kelsey talking about Commander Cody has lots of sexy faces.
That he does.
So, being her favorite thing ever mentioned on the podcast. So, thank you all. We do appreciate that you're here with us and listening.
Yep.
Absolutely. Also, get on there. Let us know if you have any ideas for episodes you'd like to hear say. Another shout out to Abinadi for doing that. I think he and Lindsay are the first ones I've seen actually do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he had some good ones there too. And also, again, get on that Facebook group because we have the event coming up. This is the last time I'm going to tell you because
Then it's
after
gonna
this
happen.
episode airs,
Yeah.
it's going to happen and you won't have the chance to come. So this Saturday, May 4th, from 4 to 8 p.m. at Dragon's Keep comic book store in Spanish Fork, 239 North Main Street here in Utah. And we will have pizza there. You have to join the Facebook group to get the password to get the free pizza, I believe is what we're doing.
Yes.
Otherwise, if you're
Yeah.
just some stranger there in the store who doesn't know the password from the Facebook group, then you're going to have to pay like
What should
a
the
buck
password
less.
be? Because some people don't have Facebook,
Oh, that's
know.
fair. That's fair.
and some people don't have Twitter.
I like giving. We'll give like 3 options. You can choose the one you like because I
Okay.
like your hello there.
Hello there.
If you walk up and say
If you
hello
come
there,
up
then
to
we'll
us
know.
and say hello there, you definitely get free pizza.
I'm still in favor of the Salacious Crumb laugh.
Yeah, if you laugh like Salacious Crumb, can you give us an example of that, Ross?
That wasn't my best.
That was terrible.
That was bad.
You have to do a better one than Ross. You have
Yes.
to have a laugh off, and if yours is better than Ross's, you get free pizza.
And I think for our third one, if you come up and say, "Hey, that pizza looks really adequate," then,
If you can work adequate into
yeah, any
your
sort of
first
drop
line.
adequate on us, and,
Yeah,
and we'll
exactly.
give you some pizza. And if not, then you know, pay us whatever pocket change you've got, and you can have some pizza. But
Exactly.
but we're gonna have pizza there. Hopefully, some drinks. We're gonna be watching some Star Wars and
important
doing
logistics.
some trivia.
Yeah, so we've nailed down some more specifics because we're only adequate. This is happening days before it starts. We are going to do trivia. Some of the trivia questions will be about Star Wars in general, the movies, the TV shows. But more importantly, because as I mentioned, I'm a self-aggrandizing megalomaniac, so we're going to do trivia about us and the podcast to see how well you've been paying attention to our shows.
And in dim hopes that maybe that'll prevent Steven from just winning all the prizes.
Yeah, that's true,
But
Steven.
frankly, even on the podcast, Steven's got
Steven
a
is
good
pretty
shot of
good.
winning.
Yeah. So come, dethrone Steven, listeners. He needs a challenger. So we're going to do some trivia. There are going to be a variety of possible prizes for that, including a gift card to Dragon's Keep, so you can go home with something. There's going to be a Star Wars poster that I have from when Solo released, and there was like an exclusive poster. I have a couple of those, but we'll only be giving away one, so we can save more copies for future prizes. We've got some other stuff as well. A cool Star Wars ship model.
We will be recording there.
We are going to be
So
recording
you can be
there
on the
We're going
podcast
to-
potentially.
Yeah, you'll be on the podcast. We're going to record you guys. You're
Don't ask
doing
us
your
how we're
trivia.
going to record there because we haven't worked that out.
Yeah.
Yep, we're still working on some miracle stuff there. And also, important logistics. So, Main Street in Spanish Fork, if you've not been there, has very little parking.
Not much at all.
There is parking behind Dragon's Keep. You have to go, like, around, like, at the end of the block. Because this is like an old school Main Street, like old 1800s Main Street.
If you've been on a main street like this, you know that all the parking is back around
exactly.
the back.
So
but-
you park around, you go around back, and park. There are several parking lots in the blocks surrounding it. So, but there will only be like 3 spots available.
And that'll
out
be
front,
on a
so-
Saturday. I think there's
On a Saturday.
bank just down the
Yeah.
like a block and a half away that there'll have
Yeah,
some
so
parking that's
there'll
not
be
being
parking
used and-
around it, but you might have to walk just a little bit.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And I think it's going to be kind of a busy day because it's free comic book day.
But it should be died down.
Yeah,
it
hopefully
should be
it'll
died
it should be
down.
dying down by then.
It
but,
should
like,
be
yeah.
at least. We're going to be in the front part of the store. There is a door to the store behind, like out back, so you can go in the front door or the back door. Either way, you'll get there. But we'll be up front, I believe. If not, follow the smell of cheap pizza, and you'll get there. And
Also,
I think that's
chime in on the Facebook group. We have a poll there
Yes.
Oh yeah.
to decide what movie we're going to watch.
Yep.
So chime in on there and see if
Currently,
there's
A
something
New
you want
Hope
to
is
watch.
winning. If you
By a
don't want
long
to watch
shot.
that one, then go vote somewhere else.
Yep.
And let
And
us
no,
know.
the holiday special is not an option.
Nope.
Don't ask.
Yep. Stop. Yeah. Just
Kyler is
stop.
prone to
please.
slapping people without
Yep,
warning.
I will. Ross has got his hands up, so I don't hit him. And then I think the only other thing that I wanted to say about that is, plus ones or more are totally welcome.
Oh, yeah.
Just let us know so that we have a rough estimate of how many people will be there, so that we can make sure there's
Yeah, so I
enough
can grab
food
some
for
more
everybody.
pizza. And,
Yeah.
and I mean, it shouldn't be too rough to
Like
just
Steven
run and
is
grab
bringing
some
his
more if we need
girlfriend,
to, but-
which I'm super excited to meet you, Steven's girlfriend, whose name I can't remember because he told me once, and that's not enough for me.
legit.
Would she be listening to this?
I'm sure Steven will let
Steven
her know.
forces her to listen to this when they're driving around, so
okay.
I don't think she's listening.
I'm
by
sorry,
choice.
Steven's
You're
girlfriend.
being held hostage. But yeah, let us So if you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, husband, wife,
Children.
child, whatever, like bring them. I don't really care.
Yeah, I'm fine with
That's
kids.
totally
That'll be
fine. Just let us know so that we can budget accordingly.
Yeah.
So. And until Saturday, may the Force be with you.
Always.
Or may the 4th be with you.
I'm Anna Graves, and thank you for listening to a more civilized podcast.
All right. Let's get started, shall we?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, my mustache is like constantly tickling my nose. In about 12 hours, we'll all be dead.
We've recently indoctrinated the nephew. We taught him about Darth Vader this morning, and now he's choking everyone. Speak for yourself, Chris. I mean, come on. Okay.
I am.
I got your joke, Ross.
I know. It's supposed to be a better joke than what it ended up being. Fine, okay. Just
It was adequate,
keep
Ross.
going.
It was adequate. It
I'll
was
probably cut that later.
ultimate unlimited power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God,
Yeah,
I'm
my
sorry.
chair squeaky.
Well, but it's also you're breathing kind of heavy into the mic.
Sorry.
So I've been trying to mess with the levels as I hear it, but it throws everything off. So another section I get a cut out.
Why?